The last person I ever expected to see on the lawns of my estate was the man who threw me out a decade ago with nothing but the clothes on my back. My father. He stood there, framed by the imported Italian marble of my doorway, looking smaller than I remembered. The bespoke suit he always wore like a suit of armor was rumpled, hanging loosely on his diminished frame. His face, once a mask of stern authority, was now etched with lines of pure desperation. He looked old, defeated, and he was begging, the son he'd called a disgrace, to save the family name he swore I'd only tarnish. He was begging me to fix the mess his golden child, my perfect brother, had made. Ever look someone in the eyes, someone who's supposed to love you unconditionally, and realize they'd rather watch you fail than see you shine? That was my reality for 18 years. To understand how we got here, how the celebrated heir became an anchor dragging them to the bottom of the ocean, and how the outcast became their only lifeboat, we have to go back to a house where love was a currency, and I was perpetually bankrupt. Growing up in the Harrison household was like living in a play where everyone had a role. My father, Arthur Harrison, was the director, a stern patriarch who saw his family as an extension of his legacy, not as a unit of love. My mother was the compliant stage manager, making sure the props were in place and the lines were said on cue. And my older brother Thomas was the star, the golden child. Thomas could do no wrong. From day one, he was a prodigy of my father's own making. He had the right hair, the right smile, the right effortless charm. He was captain of the debate team, the star quarterback, and the heir apparent to Harrison Industries, our family's century-old manufacturing empire. His perfect report cards were framed in my father's study. His trophies lined the mantelpiece like soldiers guarding his honor. My father would parade him at business dinners, his hand clamped on Thomas's shoulder, beaming. "This is my son, Thomas," he'd boom. "He's going to change the world." And then there was me, the understudy who was never meant to go on. If Thomas was the sun, I was the shadow. Where he was charming, I was quiet. Where he was athletic, I was bookish. I wasn't interested in throwing a football. I was interested in taking apart old radios and writing code on a clunky computer in the basement. My father called these pursuits un-Harrison-like. He saw my curiosity not as intelligence, but as a distraction. My introversion wasn't thoughtfulness, it was weakness. The favoritism wasn't subtle, it was a daily bludgeon. I remember one Christmas when I was 12. I'd spent months saving my allowance for a complex electronics kit to build a shortwave radio. Thomas, who was 14, wanted a new, top-of-the-line lacrosse stick. Christmas morning, Thomas had dozens of presents: designer clothes, video games, and of course, the gleaming lacrosse stick that cost more than my entire year's savings. For me, a single, small box. Inside was a navy blue sweater my father deemed respectable. When I asked about the radio kit, he fixed me with a cold stare. "Don't be ungrateful, Daniel," he said, his voice sharp. "Thomas's sport teaches him leadership. What does fiddling with wires teach you? How to be a glorified repairman." Later, I found the catalog I'd circled the radio in, lying in the trash with a coffee stain on it. Meanwhile, Thomas accidentally broke a priceless vase swinging his new stick in the house. My father just laughed. "Boys will be boys," he chuckled. "That's my future champion." I got grounded for a week for leaving the catalog on the coffee table. In high school, I won the state science fair. I'd poured my soul into the project for a year, a rudimentary algorithm for optimizing supply chain logistics, inspired by the trucks at my father's company. I was so proud. I thought, this is it. He'll finally respect this. The local paper did a small feature. When I showed it to my father, he barely glanced at it. "That's nice, Daniel," he grunted, and tossed the paper aside to read the sports section, where Thomas was mentioned for scoring 3 touchdowns. The next day, my father announced he was buying Thomas a new sports car for his commitment to excellence. My trophy gathered dust in my room, never mentioned again. The message was clear. My achievements were hobbies. His were investments. My mother saw all of it. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes with a flicker of pity, but she never intervened. Her job was to keep the peace, and peace meant keeping Arthur Harrison happy. Arthur was happy when Thomas was succeeding. So, she'd quietly mend my clothes while buying Thomas a new wardrobe. She'd offer me a sad smile when my father's words cut deep, but she would never, ever stand up for me. The whole family system was built to prop one son up by tearing the other one down. It took its toll. I became withdrawn and angry. The more my father pushed Thomas into the spotlight, the more I retreated into the shadows of the basement with my books and circuit boards. That basement became my sanctuary. It was the only place I wasn't being compared and found wanting. It was the only place I could build something instead of being told I was worthless. While my father was grooming Thomas to inherit a company, I was quietly teaching myself the skills to build an empire of my own. The end came when I was 18. It wasn't a sudden explosion, just the final collapse of a structure that had been rotten for years. It was about money, of course, and my future versus Thomas's. I'd gotten into MIT on a partial scholarship. It was my dream, the culmination of all those lonely hours in the basement. The scholarship was huge, but it didn't cover everything. I just needed my parents to co-sign a student loan. For a family with our wealth, it should have been nothing, a drop in the bucket. Meanwhile, Thomas, a sophomore at the state university my father had proudly sent him to, was in trouble. He'd been caught cheating on a midterm. On top of that, he'd racked up a wild amount of debt on a credit card my father gave him for emergencies, which apparently meant lavish parties and expensive trips for his fraternity brothers. I went into my father's study, the trophy room, and laid my financial aid papers on his massive desk. I tried to sound hopeful. "It's a great opportunity, Dad," I said. "MIT, it's the best engineering school in the country. The loan just covers the rest." He looked at the papers with disdain. He didn't even touch them. "MIT," he scoffed. "And what will you do with that, Daniel? Tinker in a garage for the rest of your life? I'm not co-signing that loan." I was stunned. "What? Why not? It's not that much money for you." "It's the principle," he said, his voice rising. "I invest in winners, in the future of this family. Right now, our resources need to go toward protecting that future." Then the other shoe dropped. "Your brother made a mistake," he said, his tone softening instantly. "A youthful indiscretion. But he is the future of Harrison Industries. We can't have a cheating scandal attached to his name. I've had to make a very sizable donation to the university to make this go away. And we've cleared his debts. He needs a clean slate." I could barely breathe. The injustice of it was suffocating. He'd erased Thomas's failures with a blank check, but wouldn't invest a single penny in my success. "So you'll pay off his debts and bribe a university, but you won't help me get an education?" I asked, my voice trembling with rage. "He's the one who cheated. He's the one who failed." That's when he stood up, his face turning beet red. "You have no idea what it takes to build a legacy. You sit in the basement with your toys while your brother is out there learning to lead. He understands people, power. You understand nothing but wires and circuits. He is my son, a Harrison. And what am I?" I yelled back, tears stinging my eyes. "Just a disappointment?" His voice dropped to a cold, deadly whisper. "Right now, you're an expense I no longer wish to carry." He walked to the door and opened it. "If you can't appreciate what this family has provided, then you're no longer part of it. Get out. Pack your things. Don't expect another dollar." I looked past him and saw Thomas in the hallway, a smug, triumphant look on his face. He'd won. He'd finally gotten rid of me. My mother was nowhere to be seen. I packed one bag with my books, the few $100s I had, and the clothes on my back. As I walked out, my father's final words echoed in the foyer. "You'll be back," he sneered. "You'll fail, and you'll come crawling back. But don't bother, this door will be closed." I didn't look back. Walking down that long driveway, I made a silent vow. I would not fail. I would not crawl back. I would build a life so successful they would one day look at what they threw away and choke on their regret. In that moment of ultimate rejection, I felt a flicker of something else. Freedom. The first few years were brutal. Freedom, I learned pretty quick, doesn't pay the rent. I was 18, with no family, no support, and a few $100. I slept in my beat-up car for weeks, reading textbooks by the dim glow of the dashboard lights in 24-hour diner parking lots. MIT was out. That dream died on the highway as I drove away from home. But the desire to build didn't die with it. I enrolled in community college, taking night classes while working 2, sometimes 3, dead-end jobs. I was a dishwasher, a night shift security guard, a stocker at a grocery store. I was exhausted, hungry, and lonely. Some nights, the despair was a physical weight, whispering my father's words in my ear. "You'll fail. You'll come crawling back." But every time, I'd picture my brother's smug face and my father's cold eyes, and that anger, that injustice, became my fuel. It was a cleaner, more powerful energy source than anything I could have designed in a lab. While Thomas was probably living it up, his slate wiped clean by our father's money, I was in the library until it closed, devouring books on computer science, economics, and business. I taught myself to code with a proficiency that blew past my intro classes. I started doing freelance web design, charging next to nothing just to build a portfolio. After 2 years, I had a perfect GPA and a small list of clients. I transferred to a state university's engineering program, paying my own way with scholarships and savings. That's where I met my future business partner, Sarah, a brilliant programmer who shared my work ethic. We were both outsiders driven to prove ourselves. Our senior year wasn't about parties, it was about our cramped apartment, fueled by cheap coffee and a shared vision. We were developing a new logistics software, one that used a predictive algorithm, an evolution of my old science fair project, to streamline shipping for e-commerce companies. Everyone told us we were crazy, that the market was too crowded. They weren't fueled by the same fire. After graduation, we turned down cushy job offers. We pooled our savings, maxed out our credit cards, and launched Logicore. The first year was a nightmare. We worked 100-hour weeks. We lived on ramen. We were rejected by every venture capitalist we pitched to. They were all versions of my father, men in suits who looked at our shabby clothes and saw risk, not potential. But our software worked. It was better, faster, and smarter than anything on the market. We landed one small client, then another. Our results spoke for themselves. Companies using our software saw their efficiency jump by 30%. Word started to spread. The tipping point came about 5 years after I left home. A major online retailer was having a catastrophic logistics failure during the holidays. Their system had crashed, and they were losing millions a day. In a Hail Mary, a manager who'd heard of us gave us a call. Sarah and I flew out that day. We worked for 72 hours straight in their server room, integrating a custom version of our system, sleeping in shifts on the floor. On the third day, we flipped the switch. It worked. The holiday season was saved. That one event blew Logicore up. Suddenly, we were on the map. The company that had nearly gone bankrupt offered us a multi-million-dollar contract. The VCs who'd shown us the door were now lining up to give us money, but now we set the terms. Over the next 5 years, Logicore became the industry standard. We went public, and I, the boy thrown out for being a glorified repairman, became one of the youngest self-made tech billionaires in the country. For 10 years, I never once reached out to my family. I changed my number, built a fortress of silence around my new life. On the rare occasion I thought of them, I just assumed they were living their perfect lives. With Thomas at the helm of Harrison Industries, I had built my own legacy. I didn't need theirs. The pain had hardened into a core of steel. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, and I had done it all without them. Crazy how life turns out, isn't it? One person's trash becomes another person's treasure, and sometimes the person they throw away is the only one who can save them. I'm curious, what would you have done in my shoes during those 10 years? Would you have tried to reconnect, Or would you have built your own world just like I did? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. You're not going to want to miss what happens next. The day my father reappeared was a Tuesday. I was in my home office, a glass-walled room overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a sanctuary built on a decade of relentless work, a universe away from the house I grew up in. My security chief buzzed the intercom. "Sir, there's an Arthur Harrison at the gate. He claims to be your father. Should we ask him to leave?" My heart skipped a beat. Arthur Harrison. The name felt like a relic from another lifetime. I stared out at the calm ocean, my mind a sudden storm. For 10 years, I'd run through this exact scenario in my head 1,000 times. In some, I was furious. In others, indifferent. In all of them, I was in control. "Let him in," I said, my voice unnervingly calm. "Escort him to the main house. I'll meet him on the terrace." I didn't rush. I walked through the minimalist halls of my home, every step on the cool limestone, a reminder of the life I had built. This was my domain. He was entering my world now. He was standing by the infinity pool, looking so out of place under the harsh California sun. The powerful, intimidating figure from my memory was gone, replaced by an old man, stooped and frail. He turned as I approached, his eyes lighting up with something I couldn't quite decipher. Pride? Shock? Or just the calculation of a desperate man? "Daniel," he said, his voice hoarse. "Arthur," I replied, my tone level. I didn't call him Dad. He'd forfeited that title long ago. We stood there in silence, the only sound the lapping of the pool's water. He took in the house, the view, the sheer scale of it all. "You've done well for yourself," he finally managed. "I'm not a disgrace, it turns out," I said. He flinched. "Daniel, I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "A mistake is taking a wrong turn. You deliberately drove me off a cliff. Let's not mince words. You abandoned your son." He looked down. "You're right," he whispered. "I was wrong. I was blind." "So why now, Arthur?" I asked, crossing my arms. "After 10 years of silence, you didn't come all this way for a heartfelt apology. That's not your style. What do you want?" He finally looked at me, the desperation raw and ugly. "I need your help," he pleaded. "The family, the company, it's all collapsing." A cold, satisfying knot tightened in my stomach. This was the moment. "And how did that happen?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "Last I heard, the golden child was at the helm, the natural-born leader." His face crumpled. "Thomas? Oh, God, Thomas." He sank into a patio chair, his head in his hands. "He's destroyed it all, Daniel. Everything. He ran the company into the ground." He then unspooled a story of total failure. Thomas, it turned out, had the charm but none of the substance. Propped up his whole life, he never learned how to handle a single setback. Once he took over Harrison Industries, there was no one to clean up his messes. He made reckless deals based on ego, alienated clients with his arrogance, and treated the company like his personal bank account. Now there were allegations of fraud and embezzlement. The company was drowning in debt, creditors were closing in, and the Harrison name, the name my father treasured more than his own children, was about to be synonymous with scandal. "He never learned," my father murmured, his voice thick with shame, "because I never let him fail. I thought I was protecting him, but I was just making him weak." "You weren't protecting him," I said, my voice devoid of pity. "You were investing in your own reflection. He was a mirror for your ego, and now the mirror is cracked." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "I know, you're right, but please, Daniel, you're the only one who can fix this. Your name, your success, it's legendary. If you stepped in, lent us the money, your expertise, you could save the family name." There it was, the plea I had been waiting a decade to hear. He wasn't asking me to save him, or even Thomas. He was asking me to save the abstract concept he sacrificed his own son for. The power had completely, utterly shifted. I let him sit there in the silence, letting his request hang in the air. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked out at the ocean. It was vast, powerful, and didn't care about names or legacies. It just was. I had become like that ocean. Let me make sure I understand, I began, turning back to him. My voice was cold and surgical, the voice I use in boardrooms to dissect a failing company. You threw me out with nothing because I wasn't a worthy investment. You poured everything into Thomas, your golden child, who has now proven to be the single worst investment you ever made. The company is in ruins. The family name is about to be dragged through the mud. And now, you've come to me, the glorified repairman, begging me to fix it all. He nodded mutely. Yes. And you want me to do this? Why? I asked. For the family? The family that cast me out. Let's be clear, Arthur. I don't have a family. You made sure of that. Tears welled in his eyes. Daniel, I'm your father. You are my biological progenitor, I corrected him. You stopped being my father the day you chose your pride over your son. You chose a name over a person. And now you're asking that person to save the name. He started to sob, not the controlled tears of a powerful man, but the broken, heaving sobs of a defeated one. What do you want from me? Anything. I'll do anything. I let him cry for a moment. My help is not free, I said, my voice steely. It will come at a cost, but it has nothing to do with money. I leaned down, my face close to his. You think this is a financial crisis? It's not. It's a moral one, and the debt has to be paid. Term number 1, I said. You will cede 100% of your controlling shares in Harrison Industries to me. Effective immediately. For $1, you will no longer have any authority or any say in the company you built. It will be mine. He stared at me, his mouth agape. Term number 2, I continued. Thomas will be fired, publicly, and he will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law for any financial crimes he has committed. No backroom deals. He will face the consequences of his actions. Your money won't save him this time. My money will make sure he doesn't escape. My father looked like I'd struck him. But he's your brother, my son. He is a liability, I said flatly. This is not a negotiation. And term number 3, I said, delivering the final blow. You will call a press conference. You will stand up in front of the world and tell them the truth. Not just about the company's failures, but about yours. You'll tell them you had 2 sons, that you favored one and discarded the other. You will admit your judgment was flawed, that you cultivated weakness in your chosen heir and drove away the only person who could have helped. You will apologize, not to me privately, but to the world publicly. You will save the Harrison name by admitting you were the one who broke it. He looked at me with horror. He had come for a quiet bailout. He expected me to be the bigger person, to forgive and forget. Instead, I was demanding his complete and total surrender. I was demanding not just his company, but his pride, his legacy, and the last shred of his authority. I'll give you 24 hours to decide, I said, standing up. If you agree, I'll save the company. I'll rebuild it into something stronger, better, but it will be mine. My name, my rules. If you refuse, I'll walk away, and I will sit here in my beautiful house and watch Harrison Industries and the family name you hold so dear burn to the ground. The choice is yours. I walked away and left him there, a broken man in the middle of a paradise he couldn't have. I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. No rush of victorious glee. Instead, I felt a strange, quiet calm, a sense of closure. The real victory wasn't bringing my father to his knees. It wasn't about the money or the revenge. The true victory happened years ago, in the quiet moments of my solitary struggle. It happened when I got my degree, when I launched my company, when I realized I could build my own world, where my worth wasn't determined by anyone else's approval. Saving the Harrison name was never the point. The point was saving myself. and I had already done that. Whether he accepts my terms or not is almost irrelevant. If he does, I'll take over the company not for him, but for the employees whose livelihoods were almost destroyed by my brother's ego. I'll rebuild it on a foundation of merit, not nepotism. And if he refuses, I'll continue to live my life, free from the ghosts of my past. My father thought he was asking me to save his legacy. What he was really doing was finally admitting that I had built a better one. And in the end, that's the only vindication that matters.